Welcome to my podcast where we discuss various topics related to Quebec and Canadian real estate. In today's episode number 11, we're going to compare the HBP, the Home Buyers Program, to the FHSA, the First Home Savings Account. So in episode number 9 and episode number 10, I dedicated both these episodes to discuss each of these programs. And then in today's episode, we're just going to do a comparison to see which one would be better suitable for your situation. And in order to do so, I'm going to go through 9 different elements that we're going to compare both programs. And then I'm going to close off today's episode with giving you some advice on what should be the course of action that you could take to help fund your next home purchase. So without further ado, let's get started. So let's first talk about the first element, which is what. Let's define both program. I know we've done that in previous episode, but in case you haven't watched it. So the first program, so they're both federal program. The first one, which is the HBP, the Home Buyers Program, it basically enables to use some of your RRSP funds in order to use it as a down payment for your first home purchase. So if you already have an RRSP, it's very simple to use. There's a form like we said in the past. If you haven't listened to episode number 9, I strongly recommend that you go back, watch it. I kind of explained the process in order to do the transfer. But basically, if you already have an RRSP, it's straightforward. There's a form you have to fill up, and then you follow the steps. And it's a program that's been available to Canadian for many years now. And for the FHSA, it's a newly formed program that was launched in 2023. And similar to the HBP, it's an account that you open, basically, and you invest funds every year. And those funds, you'll be able to eventually use them as a down payment to purchase your first home. So that's the what. In terms of who's eligible, they both have the same eligibility. The federal government launched these programs to help first-time home buyers, and the Canadian Revenue Agency define a first-time home buyer the same for both programs. So a first-time home buyer is anybody who in the last 4 years prior to wanting to purchase their first home, they have not owned any other property, especially the property they lived in. The only difference between the two programs is for the FHSA, you need to qualify as a first-time home buyer when you open the account, and then you're going to have to qualify again when you're ready to withdraw the funds in order to purchase your first home. So something to think about and be careful. So that is the who. So let's talk about the third element now in terms of total limit. So for the HBP program, you have a total limit of $35,000 that you can use in total out of your RRSP to use it as down payment. If you're buying with somebody else, that person can also use the program. So they also have a limit of $35,000. So that's a total combined of $70,000 that can be used. For the FHSA, it has $5,000 more, so it's a $40,000 limit. So that's a benefit of the FHSA compared to the HBP. So you can use up to $40,000 in total contribution as a down payment. And again, if you're buying with somebody else, that's a total of $80,000. So a point for the FHSA for that criteria. Fourth element is the yearly contribution, very important. For the FHSA, you have a total limit at the moment of $8,000. So that program launched in 2023. So there's an $8,000. So for 2024, presumably it's going to be around that same limit. But that is your yearly maximum contribution that you're allowed to do. For the HBP program, because you're leveraging your RRSP, the limit applies to your RRSP. So in case you're not aware, if I look at 2023, the total limit that you're allowed to contribute into your RRSP represent approximately 18% of the income of the previous year. So that would be 18% of your income that you declared in 2022 to a maximum of $30,000. So that's the our yearly RRSP limit contribution. Because remember, every time we're going to talk about the HBP program, it's very tied to your RRSPs. So that is for the fourth element in terms of the year limit. Now, just one last point to mention for the RSP. If you make, for example, just for comparison's sake, so if you're making $60,000 a year, 18% represent 10,800, so that would be the total limit for a given year. So which is way more than the FHSA, which we said it was $8,000 per year. Fifth element is contribution rollover. So what we mean by that is any unused contribution for the year. Do you lose it or does it roll over for the following year? In terms of both programs, so whether it's the RSP for the HPP or the FHSA, any unused contribution gets added to the following year. So in the FHSA, if you did not invest $8,000, let's just say you invested only $6,000, there's $2,000 room that you still had. That $2,000 gets carried over into the following year. Same logic with the RRSP, and the unused contribution gets added to the following year. So both programs are very similar from that perspective. The sixth element is tax deduction. So both gives you tax deduction. RRSP, obviously, that's a given. That's the reason why we invest in RRSP. The same thing with the FHSA. Any contribution that you put in the account helps reduce your income, which gives you a tax credit. Now, one of maybe the difference for those that work for a certain organization or large corporation, they usually have program where they deduct your RRSP before taxes gets applied to your paycheck. So that may be a benefit from a contribution perspective. So something to consider. Number 7 is the payback. And this is where the FHSA has a much bigger advantage over the HPP program. So the HPP program, as I explained in a previous episode, any money that you used will have to be paid back within 15 years after the first year of using the program, right? So if you use $30,000 or 35, let's just say 35 is the maximum, you use that 35,000 is going to be divided by 15 years, and that yearly amount, you'll have to put it back into your RRSP. In terms of the FHSA, there is no payback. So whatever amount you contributed in there, once you use it to buy your first home, you don't need to invest back and pay it back. So that is a big benefit of the FHSA compared to the HPP program. Number 8 is the type of home that both programs allow you to buy. They're both the same. So either you can buy a house that's existing that you find on the MLS or anywhere that you're looking for, as long as it's an existing house, or you can buy a newly construction as long as you have a contract with a builder within the first year of you using the program. The last element is the contribution penalty. So both program, or I should say, both the RRSP account and the FHSA account have a penalty if you contribute more than the limit. So in terms of the FHSA, there's they both have a 1% penalty. So if you contribute more than the $8,000 into your FHSA, that extra limit, so let's just say you put 9,000, that 1,000 extra, you're going to be paid, you're going to be charged 1% penalty every month until that limit is removed. And there is a process to transfer those extra fund out of your account without incurring penalty, which we discussed in the last episode. In terms of your RRSP, maybe a lot of people don't know this, but there is a penalty limit also of 1%. But know that it's much harder to hit that limit. I would venture to say that most Canadian don't invest anywhere near their RRSP limit. So the likelihood of you hitting that limit is very thin. Although I still recommend that you, whether you look at the report that the CRA sends you at the end of the year, or you can log into your portal and look at what limit that you have. So you have to be careful in both ways. So those were the 9 elements to compare both programs. And as you can tell by now, they're both very similar. Where the FHSA shines a bit more is in terms of you don't have to pay back, although it's a fairly new program, right? So it launched in 2023. So the likelihood of you having a large amount of money in that account is there is, right? So there isn't. So if you've maximized already for 2023, you only have $8,000. So if you're looking to buy a home in 2024 at the time of the recording of this video, $8,000 cannot really get you anything in terms of the house prices that we have today, right? So most likely the HBP program is going to be more of an advantage for you, given that it's been your RRSPs have existed for a very long time now, and most likely you have much more funds you have more money in your RRSP than you would have in your FHSA in order to purchase a home. However, some advice that I can give is, let's just say you're looking to buy a home in 2025. So there would have been the limit of 2023 and the limit of 2024. So that's a total of $16K. Let's just say, hypothetically speaking, you currently have $30,000 in your RRSP. So you have two ways to go about it if you're buying your first home, and let's just say here you do qualify as a first-time home buyer. So the first approach that you could take is use that $30,000 as part of the HBP program and transfer it into your regular account to be able to buy your first property without incurring any penalties. So you can do that as part of the HBP. So you take that $30,000 and you use it as part of that program. As a reminder, that $30K, you will have to reimburse it on a 15-year period. So that's situation number one. Situation number two is, what you could do is, out of that 30,000, take 16,000, move it into the FHSA without any penalty, because you're allowed to move between your RRSP and your FHA account without incurring any penalties. And we said that you would have your 2023 limit and 2024. So that's a total of 8. And I'm factoring in that the limit for 2024 is 8,000. So that's a total of 16K. So out of that 30, you move 16,000 into your FHSA. So you're left with 14,000 in your RRSP and 16,000 in your FHSA. And you use both program, because one thing that I did not mention is why choose between the two when you can actually use both. And the government allows you to use both program at the time of this recording. And the benefit of that second approach that I'm recommending is, in the first approach, you have to pay back the full 30,000. But in the second approach, that 16K that you transferred into your FHSA, you don't have to pay it back. So you'll only be left with paying back that 14,000 that was left in your RRSP that you're using as part of the HBP program, which is going to be much less than you having to reimburse that 30,000. So that's a tip for you, that, again, any advice that you get, especially from a financials perspective, make sure you discuss it with your accountant or your fiscal specialist, just to make sure that it's the right approach for your situation. That concludes today's episode. I hope the information was helpful to you, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for watching.